Hello everybody, I'm VTV, you're watching Variety Television, and welcome to my absolute beginner's guide to VGC. This is a video to teach players everything that they may need to know to get started in VGC. Keep in mind, this is an absolute beginner's guide to VGC, so some of the topics discussed in today's video may seem very basic to someone who has played Pokemon before. This is, however, exactly what this video is supposed to be, a guide for someone who has never battled in a VGC setting, or someone who hasn't even battled very much at all, because I personally know people who are getting into VGC but have never played a main series Pokemon game before, and therefore don't really understand the fundamentals of the game yet. This is most likely going to be a series, with this video covering attacks, abilities, status conditions, and the basics of stats. So with that being said, let's get into the fundamentals. I want to make a quick note here and say I will not be discussing type matchups in this series. That would take way too much time, and there are abundant resources for learning type matchups online, from charts that tell you every single possible matchup to YouTube videos explaining ways to help you memorize these. Type matchup resources are aplenty, so again, we will not be discussing those here. First, let's talk about one of the most fundamental aspects of a Pokemon, and that is their attacks. All Pokemon have attacks, all Pokemon use attacks, and there are hundreds of moves in the game and thousands of combinations of moves that you could use. This may seem like a lot, but attacks can be broken down into a few simple categories to help you better understand them. The first category is physical attacks. These attacks take advantage of a Pokemon's attack stat, which we'll be discussing stats a little bit later, and almost always imply that a Pokemon using a physical attack will make physical contact with an opposing Pokemon. A good example of a physical attack is Tackle, in which your Pokemon slams their body into the target Pokemon to deal damage. Next, we'll talk about special attacks. These are attacks that take advantage of a Pokemon's special attack stat and almost never make contact with the target Pokemon. Special attacks are often projectile attacks or attacks launched from a distance. A good example of this is Water Gun, in which your Pokemon would shoot a stream of water at the target Pokemon to deal damage. Lastly, but just as importantly, are non-damaging or status moves. These are moves that don't directly damage opposing Pokemon, but provide other benefits in the form of stat buffs, or setting status conditions, or even negating attacks fully. A good example of a non-damaging move would be Protect. It doesn't deal damage, but it stops all damage from incoming attacks, with only a couple of exceptions. One last thing to consider about any kind of attack, physical, special, or status, is the typing of the attack. Pokemon can come in any combination of the 18 current typings, even more with terrestrialization becoming a thing, so paying close attention to the type of attack is just as important as making sure you use the proper category of attack for a Pokemon. At this point, you may be thinking, why do category and type matter so much in the first place? And my answer to that would be this. In a competitive setting, you want your Pokemon performing at their greatest possible potential. Pokemon do a bit of extra damage for doing attacks that match their typing. A grass-type Pokemon like Bulbasaur would deal way more damage using a grass-type attack than a ground-type attack, for example. This mechanic is known as Stab, or Same-Type Attack Bonus. Now, say you've got a very strong grass attack on your Bulbasaur, and you're getting that little bit of extra damage from Stab. It's possible to deal even more extra damage by using the correct category. If Bulbasaur's special attack stat is bigger than its physical attack stat, it will inherently deal more damage by using special attacks because it has a higher number to pull from. Moving away from attacks, we're going to get started on abilities. Abilities aren't something I can be very specific about because many Pokemon have many different abilities. Abilities are basically these bonus attributes that a Pokemon can possess. Abilities can also do very different things at very different times or under completely different circumstances. For example, Zacian's ability Intrepid Sword raises its physical attack stat by 1 stage when you send it out to battle. However, Gastrodon has an ability called Storm Drain, allowing it to absorb almost all incoming water-type attacks, with only a couple of exceptions. Like I said, very different attributes with very different circumstances, however both are incredible abilities to have if utilized properly, so always keep a close eye on a Pokemon's ability while you're battling or team building. Unfortunately, that's really all I've got for abilities. They are very broad in terms of what I could teach you here, so we're just going to move on to status conditions. We're going to cover the status conditions in terms of how often I see them used, most often first, on to least often. First up is paralysis. When a Pokemon is paralyzed, they have a chance to not be able to move during their turn. On top of this, being paralyzed cuts said Pokemon's speed stat in half, making them much slower than they were before. Second up is burn. Being burned causes a Pokemon to lose a small amount of HP at the end of every turn, but just like paralysis, burn also affects a Pokemon's stats, effectively cutting a Pokemon's physical attack stat in half. Next up, we have, in my opinion, the third most common status condition, which is sleep. A Pokemon who is asleep will not attack, but they have a chance to wake up each turn. Fourth is confusion. This is similar to paralysis in that your Pokemon have a chance to not attack. The difference is the speed stat is not affected and the confused Pokemon has a chance to attack themselves instead. The damage dealt from confusion is always calculated using the physical attack stat, so physical attackers hit themselves harder than special attackers do. Fifth is poison/toxic. So these are almost the same as each other and most of the time are only differentiated by the color of purple shown where it says poisoned, and that's not all the time either. However, there is a bigger difference than just the color purple. Regular poison is indicated by the status notifier that your Pokemon has been poisoned, and they will take a small amount of damage at the end of each turn, similar to burn. However, this does not affect the Pokemon's stats. Toxic will have the notifier your Pokemon has been badly poisoned, and they take damage at the end of every turn, but they take slightly more damage each turn that passes. Toxic also does not affect stats. Last on the list is going to be Frozen, probably the best status condition in the game if it weren't so rare. Frozen Pokemon cannot attack, and they have a small chance to thaw out each turn. There are other status conditions like Cursed or Infatuated, however these are unmarked statuses and are almost never seen in competitive play, with the small exception for Curse. Okay, but that is enough about status conditions, and since we've mentioned stats a few times at this point, it's probably a good idea to start talking about those. First up is HP. Hit points, health points, I do not know. It's HP. This is how much of a health bar your Pokemon is gonna have in battle. Next up is attack, also known as physical attack. This indicates how much damage a Pokemon can deal while using physical attacks. The higher the number, the more the damage. Defense, also known as physical defense, indicates how well a Pokemon can take damage from a physical attack. The higher the number, the less damage they take. Special attack is the same as physical attack, but for special attacks, and special defense is similar to defense, but it is used when taking special attack damage. Lastly is speed. This mostly determines order of attacks in battle. In typical battle settings, the fastest Pokemon goes first and the slowest last. There are many exceptions to this, however, it's just a general rule of thumb when deciding battle order. Okay, so I know that seemed like a lot of information, but as you do battles, a lot of this stuff is going to become second nature. It's just important to be aware of it when you first get started so that you can try and make the best decisions while battling or team building. That's going to be it for this episode, and that's going to be all the things we cover here today. We are going to be continuing this series if you guys would like me to, talking about other topics such as team building, common strategies that you see across the generations, type coverage, or whatever you guys let me know you would like to learn more about. Set aside type matchups. We're not going to be covering those here. There's a plethora of information out there for that. So with all that being said, I hope you enjoyed. If you did, leave a like. I would greatly appreciate it. My channel is still new. I'm still trying to grow my channel, so if you haven't subscribed, I would really appreciate that. That would let me know that you like what you see and to continue making videos like this. With that being said, I'm gonna get out of here. See you later, guys.